Hi, everybody. Welcome to Ramblemancy.
See?
That's what I got.
See?
As many of you have noticed, we have some new sub badges. We have our new 9 month and 1 year sub badges. Um, so yeah, these were done by Olivia Adams at Meaning of Night on Twitter. Um, go follow her because she's amazing, and she did a lot considering how little actual this like direction I gave her on any of these. I was like, I don't know, the roll logo, maybe some colorful flames or something. I don't know. And then she went ham. So yeah, I'm very excited about that, and they are beautiful as you can see. Um, I believe it is two T's in Meaning of Night.
Oh, hold on.
I'm reasonably certain. Um,
Double check.
but yeah, I could be wrong about that. Well,
It is two
it's
T's.
two T's. Yeah. Um, but yeah, um, you can go and follow her because she's great and she does amazing work with surprisingly and disappointingly little direction. Um, we had very specific ideas for the 9 month badge and just sort of very nebulous ideas for the 1 year badge, and she did an amazing job with those. So, yeah, we have some dope new sub badges. Um, right. So things that are happening. First of all, the most recent episode of Infinite Horizon just went up on YouTube today. It is part one of our two-part, two-ish part finale. And it is the theoretically two-part finale. um, there was some player plotting after last episode about dragging it out as long as absolutely possible so that we can just keep playing. Um, the two-ish part finale. It's the first part is on YouTube. Episode 26 reunions. It's a good one, and I'm very excited for the next one. Um, also, we have tomorrow. We are playing Borderlands right here at. I was about to say at this time, but it's not at this time. It's at an hour earlier tomorrow. So at 6 p.m. Pacific tomorrow, Saturday, we are playing Borderlands 2. We are continuing our playthrough with Bree, and I'm very excited about that. Because there hasn't been nearly enough explodey chaos in my life, and I need more.
Truly.
Um, Heart of Handprint says well, part one of our never-ending finale. Yeah, that's the dream, I guess. It turns out the entire rest of Infinite Horizon is just the finale. It's just multiple parts. Um,
It's
and
gonna get hard in the writers' room to continuously top each, like, just up the ante every single episode for the rest of Infinite Horizon, but it's a challenge that we've decided to take on.
yeah, my spoiler-free reaction to last episode. That's fair. That's completely fair. And it's an excellent question. Um, moving on. Um,
So that literally anything else.
uh,
Mm-hmm.
so oh gosh, there was a
So,
second thing, a third thing. How do numbers work?
Hmm.
frankly, I'm not concerned. I'm not convinced that they do it all.
Yeah,
It
that's
always
fair.
seemed kind of like my math teacher was maybe just kidding me the whole time, and
Hmm.
I'm still not certain
Yeah.
that they're not.
Geek Outs confirms numbers are
True.
made up. So there it is. You
Shit.
heard it
Well, it's in
here.
Twitch chat. It's
Yep.
in Twitch chat, so it's got to be
It's
true.
got to be true.
Whew.
The okay.
Tales from the Loop.
Yes, the it came from the loop.
Ooh.
Our short run of Tales from the Loop game that is going to be run. It's going to be GM'd by Caitlin. We'll be starting 2 weeks after the conclusion of Infinite Horizon. Um, Caitlin specifically requested 2 weeks in between to get sort of last minute preparations together, so that's what we were going to be doing. Um, and yeah, we will be announcing the cast very soon. I believe patrons and Twitch subscribers get that a week early, which I believe is September 9th.
I believe you are correct.
September 9th,
Let me check the calendar.
That
probably.
is a number that sounds familiar.
I'm pretty sure that's it. That's what it is. Um,
It is in fact the ninth.
cool. September 9th is when we will get our cast announcement out to patrons and to Twitch subscribers. Provided that Twitch subscribers are also on the Discord, you will. That's because that's where you will be getting them. And yeah, and then everybody else will have that announcement fully public the week after that, which is the. Hold on, I'm doing math in my head. It's the 16th. No, yes, the 16th. I can do math. Um, so yeah, that is what is going to be happening. Also, yes, John is wearing an Infinite Horizon shirt, which you can yourself be wearing if you
You
so
can look
choose.
this fabulous and be this comfortable if you click the link to our merch store.
I don't, John. I don't.
It's good.
That's verging on false advertising. Okay, nobody can quite compete with you in that respect.
Oh, be still my heart, Lucas.
Yeah. See, Geek Outs knows what I'm talking about.
We are not worthy. This is just a time now for me to be cheered on by my friends. So like my closet is right here. I'm just gonna start up a fashion show. That's Ramblemancy for tonight.
That's the whole episode, everybody.
Fancy Mancy, no.
Fancy Mancy?
Um,
I'm new
fancy.
to it.
Ramble
Ramble
fancy.
fancy.
That was the thing that we were
Fancy.
talking about a while back. Yeah, talking about
Yeah.
Ramble Fancy. Anyway, this is now a time for us to worship John. That's really all the time, actually. But
Stop. I will wait. I can't mute you. You're in charge here.
that's right. You have
I'm
to take it.
helpless.
I can mute
Oh,
you. I can
gosh.
mute your protestations.
I'm being
Oh.
attacked.
All right. Well, yes, as Nico tried to segue us into a little while ago, speaking of math teachers, which we haven't been for the last several minutes, but speaking of math teachers, let's get into tonight's episode where we will be talking about the school as a setting for tabletop RPGs and other stories. So,
Mhm.
where do we want to start?
I'll say right off the bat,
Yeah.
I actually have not. I don't think I've really played any tabletop games in that setting, but I'm familiar with the concept. I think it's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
I can think
And
of one.
yeah,
I can too.
that I was in, or
Yes,
Uh-huh.
in fact,
I'm trying to think back
it's
to a time.
yeah, it's a little
To a different
D&D
time.
show. It's where set
Ah.
in a magic university.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wait,
You're-
Lucas, this isn't the one I was thinking of.
Oh, I'm so sorry, John. I didn't. Yes, you were a player in Dungeons and Dorm Rooms.
Rooms?
Oh, I know.
Amethyst Cat Lady beat you to the punch.
Oh.
Chat's way ahead of me. I gotta
Yeah.
be way faster than that.
Yeah.
I guess I stand corrected then.
Yeah.
That's the only one. Unless I get corrected again. But I like the concept a lot. And now that I remember this, I love it even more. Thank you. Wow, that was a thing.
I think there's something fun about being like set in a I've again like I haven't played a game where I was off the top of my I haven't played one recently, I'll say, where I was a student in a school and that was a major plot point. I ran one recently. But it's a super fun setting in my mind just because there's like so much there's so much like mood that you don't need to establish right off the bat because so many like everyone has that shared experience at the table of having been to school for like
Yeah.
a significant portion of their lives. Like, the first not quite fourth of your life is spent in school or like around it.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm distracted. I got distracted because I just realized I forgot to adjust my camera. So hold on a second.
Oh no. All right, hang on, chat.
Rule of Lore are a very professional organization. We know what we're doing, and we're always prepared. Sorry, John. I didn't mean to interrupt you with my.
No, it's all good. I was just sort of like talking about the fun thing about school, especially like from the GM side of things, is that there's a lot of mood building or like just things that you can draw on that's really fun. Because I remember in that game that I ran recently for some of our Gen Con group, I all I had to do was like start describing some habits that my high school teachers had, and everybody in the room was like, "Oh yeah, yeah,
Oh yeah,
no,
I
I
know
know."
that teacher. Yeah, totally.
So,
Yeah, there's it's interesting because there's a series of what I think are like pretty universal experiences in schools. I mean, it might vary depending on like country of origin, but at least as far as American schools, there are but I can't speak to those. So, but as because my
mhm.
experience is primarily with American schools, but there are a series of like universal experiences I think that and actually that's part of one of the things that was kind of behind our design when it came to dungeons and dorm rooms was the idea um, of basically building up a show based on like universal experiences. So in terms of college, for instance, the fact that somehow by the end of the semester, all the salt shakers are just miraculously gone from the cafeteria. They're just
Mhm.
gone. People just take them into their rooms and keep them personally. It's just apparently a universal experience.
It's
Um,
because of like you lose all that salt crying doing your homework, Lucas.
that's true.
You
Yeah,
got to
that's
replenish it somehow.
yeah.
Oh man. Oh man.
Oh yeah, Geekouts makes an excellent point. Hiding in the theater instead of going to pep rallies.
Oh, see, I was weird.
Mhm.
I actually kind of enjoyed those. Um, but and looking back on it, I understand why because ADHD brain was like, "Ooh, new thing, different day. It's not a routine," and so.
Yeah. They were nice in that like they kind of break you out of the like that slog of that you get like going through school where you're like, ah
And
yes,
they're better than
today's
regular assemblies because regular assemblies are usually just sort of sitting there listening to people drone on about things you don't care about.
mhm.
So, like, yeah.
At least like the pep band is there and they've like tried to plan some half-hearted goofy shenanigans and maybe the assistant principal gets taped to the wall, so
Wait, what?
Um. Whoa.
do I all right, no, that actually happened in high school. It was a fundraising thing. Like if
Okay.
we had a, I think it was, no, it was homecoming week and we were fundraising for like a charity or something like that in the school, and if we hit a certain amount, Mr. Jumper was like, all right, if we hit this much, I you guys can tape me to the wall during the
That's
pep
funny. It's
assembly.
like it's like the complete opposite of like a polar plunge, right? Like of where
Hmm.
instead of knocking them off of something, you're just making sure they can never walk away from it. That's yeah.
Hmm.
All right, I can see that.
Yeah, no, it was a good time. So like there's I swear we've talked about it a little bit so far, but like there's different kinds of school settings, right?
Mhm.
Not just it's not universal. Um, so like for you guys, when you think about school settings for like games or media, what one comes to mind first to you?
I don't know. I think I pretty evenly jump. It depends on what my mindset is in the moment because I think I
Hmm.
have about a 50-50 shot of jumping to high school or college. Like I'm like
Hmm.
it's about a 50-50 shot. Actually, if I'm thinking about TTRPGs specifically, I'm probably thinking about high school.
There's I think more, especially for TTRPGs, the structure that high school lends is really, really nice for moving events along, like as a GM for moving events along and for like denoting passage of time too. Like sometimes with D&D campaigns, you can play for like a month straight and it's been like 6 hours in game.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Nico said if I had one thing to say to school me, it would be start a D&D club now.
Mm-hmm.
so interesting story. I was about to, I never actually got to teach at this school, but I was hired at a place, and when I was interviewing, I was talking to the principal and walking around, and he just like casually mentioned that they had a D&D club in this rural Minnesotan high school, and I was just like, oh my god, I'm so excited to work here now.
Yeah. That's
So
a
I
good
think like
motivator.
think one of the theater teachers ran it, which would have been amazing, but I never got to experience it. I wound up
Excellent.
getting sick and not being able to work that fall. But
Sorry, I apologize. Shortly before the stream started, I took the closest thing to a nap that can be accomplished in 15 minutes. So like I'm still a little bit like, what day is it? What year is
What
it?
year?
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I'm trying to think because like Amethyst Cat Lady brings up a good point, which is this the structure, and it's also a good excuse to have a diverse group come together. It's a lot easier, I think, to do that in with a high school setting than with a college setting, because in
Mhm.
like in college setting, like you're never really required to be anywhere except for class, and class is not is too structured of an activity to like actually have any meaningful for the sake of like TTRPGs. But when it comes to when it comes to high school, you're very quite often you like have obligations to be places, right? Like
Yeah.
you if you're in a club, you kind of have to be there or they kick you out.
Mhm.
If you are in detention, you better fucking show up. You know, like that kind of stuff. Like it's
Mhm.
Otherwise, like the ex-military like para that they use to hunt down kids that don't go to detention,
fucking
like will come out there.
truancy officers. Is that like we never? I don't know that we ever had that in my high school.
He wasn't like, he was called Doc in our high school, and he wasn't like actually, he was like a para, like, but
Okay.
he was
Huh.
just like the go-to guy that they would always send after kids who were like trying to wander off campus. And he was like that kind of guy that would be like super stern but sit you down and be like, listen kid, you got to get it in line, he'd like, you're a loose cannon but you're the best kid, like the like that
Yeah.
energy.
I love it.
Gentle but firm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. Let's see.
But
Heart of Hemprin says D&D clubs in schools are amazing. We started one for our middle schoolers last year, and they are already asking us when it will start back up again this year. We started classes this past Wednesday. Oh man, that's awesome. Well, not about the starting classes, but about the like,
mhm.
uh, but about the D&D club. That is awesome. See, that's the thing. This is this is not really like. I guess it is not. It's not TTRPGs set in schools, but it is TTRPG in schools. But a thing
Mhm.
that I've been always been curious about, but I don't know that I'd be good at, is running like a TTRPG for like middle schoolers. And like
So
I've always been curious about it. Like I work with a lot of middle schoolers, and I work with that age a lot of the time. But the idea of running something that structured with them is like I would want them to be at least sixth graders right before I attempted that. You know.
yeah, I think you would probably have a difficult time trying to run something like Dungeons and Dragons for
Oh, I
um
would not run
like
D and D.
fourth or fifth
I
graders.
wouldn't run D&D for
Yeah. But
mainly because
out of
I remember my experience at that age when I was first. Sorry, there's. I have apparently trapped myself in this room with a very large fly.
Oh
My
no.
experience with
Oh
D and
no.
D in when I was like first introduced to it at that age was like all these rules and things are just getting in the way of what I actually want to be doing, which is playing make believe.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, maybe not everybody sees it that way, but I think, yeah,
Yeah, and I think 5e is probably better than, I don't know, were you playing like 3e
yeah.
in
At that age, it would have been
yeah.
3.5. Yeah.
5e I think is probably an easier system to introduce middle schoolers to. And it's interesting because like there was a period early on in quarantine where I was looking at like some online like teaching stuff. And I found somebody who, like, no joke, does exactly that. They run D&D campaigns online for like middle and high schoolers, and a lot of middle schoolers. There's a ton of demand apparently for like for D&D games for kids that age. And it was interesting, like, kind of, because I watched a video that she had made and put on her own YouTube about doing it, an interview that she had with like a podcast friend of hers, and she talked about a lot of the things that you don't, that you kind of have to deal with a lot more like emotional problems in between players, and like establishing, like, in terms of like making sure that you plan out that everybody gets some kind of loot out of a situation or something like that, because that can be very upsetting to a 12-year-old when somebody gets a really cool piece of loot that they wanted
Ah,
and they don't
yes.
get it. So
Cooperation is certainly a skill that is it is not it has just started to manifest as a concept in kids that
Hmm.
age.
yeah. The other big thing that she said too was like adults, adults for the larger part, understand that the dice are unkind sometimes, but because of the nature of a die rolls, like it's gonna roll around in your favor again.
Yeah. Also, I'm going to amend what I said, but it's
Mhm.
not just starting to manifest in kids that age. It's just starting to manifest as a concept in boys that age. Let's be real here.
Fair.
Like the girls have
Yes.
had that figured out for some time by that point. um yeah, no, like that's yeah.
Heart of Handprints, I will go find them. I can't remember the teacher's name. She's like an online. She teaches basically online. I can't remember the name of the site or the teacher, but I will find them and I'll post them in the Ramblemancy chat. Because it's a pretty cool interview. And she runs, like, she basically just runs a bunch of D&D modules, some that she homebrewed and a lot that are just like, straight up D&D modules that she just runs for kids online. So
Yeah.
link those in the Ramblemancy chat after the episode.
That's super cool. I back to the like school as a setting for TTRPGs.
Mm-hmm.
I know because originally this was this topic was a suggestion by Amethyst Cat Lady, and one of the things that she had brought up when we were talking about it was an interesting question, I think, which is um, an interesting question I think about it is why like what attracts us to that setting, because I know especially when I first started running games, the idea of setting the games in a school was like it would never have crossed my mind, and I was in school at the time. It's only been like in the last uh several years since leaving school that I even considered it as an
Hmm.
idea, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm curious, not just in tabletop RPGs, but like in stories, what in like movies, TV shows, whatever, like what attracts us to those things? That's what I'm curious about.
That's it. Like, that's a good question. And like, I think something that one of the reasons that I was interested in this topic is I started watching Fantasy High on Dimension 20 recently. And like, first of all, fantastic show. Dimension 20 is amazing. Highly recommend their content. But they, I don't know that I would have been able to enjoy Fantasy High as much as I enjoyed it or am enjoying it if I was like still in school watching it.
Hmm.
Fair.
Um, the distance between me and my high school experience is
Hmm.
very nice, but like it speaks so well to like that John Hughes high school media vibe,
Yeah.
like so well. They just kill it. But
Yeah.
yeah. Well, I think that's another, like, that almost alludes again to your question though, Lucas, is like, if I can say John Hughes movies and everyone goes, ah, yes, the school movies guy, like there's something about school settings that is very enticing to people.
Yeah, and I think there's two really good points that I saw. One by Gemini Lightning, who said, "I love that we can directly influence the world the game is set in by what we make the school like. It's like a microcosm," which that's also extremely
Hmm.
cool, and I think that is really interesting. And I want to come back to that. But Amethyst Cat Lady also said maybe as adults we're more likely to romanticize our memories of our time in school.
Hmm.
Yeah, I suspect that is a big part of it. At least I feel like it probably is for me. But I also think for myself, I've never been the person. I was never the kid who hated school. Like I
Mhm.
wasn't the like, oh my god, school's starting. This is so great. Like I was groaning right along with everybody else. But like I also was the person who like secretly was like, I don't know what I would do without this, right? Like even once I was leaving
Hmm.
college, it was a weird, especially when I was leaving college because it was the first time in my entire life when I had like not been uh that like or I wasn't compelled to go. Um I guess that was technically true of college itself, but in my own mind I compelled myself to go. But like after that it was just sort of like, all right, I don't know what to do now. So I think for myself I was never like, I don't know, school was always a thing that I was kind of, I looked forward to, in spite of the fact that there were things that I would rather not have about it. So
Hmm.
I like was a very specific and still am a very specific brand of turbo nerd, and so like at the same time, like as you, I was groaning along at the beginning of the school year with everybody else, but secretly I was like, yes, I am kind of excited to like do some of the shit that I'm going to be doing this year, because like I just kind of like to learn stuff, and that's like a large, like a driving think of why I there, and so, or like why I didn't hate coming back, and like mind you, by mid-February I had really changed my tune, but like even the teachers have really changed their tune by mid-February
yeah,
because it's been like a month and a half since you had anything more than the weekends off, and everyone wants to go home.
yeah,
I would say that my schooling was pretty unconventional and pretty terrible. Um, so my experience is a little different from your guys's,
mm-hmm.
Hmm.
but I do appreciate the I think what I love about the way the setting's used in across the board is um, the heroics that take place and the um, experiencing it without needing to be a part of it.
Yeah,
Hmm.
Um, but definitely the heroics. I love the kids saving the day.
yeah,
Because
So
because the adults are dumb.
the kids on bikes is my favorite genre, or
Oh
my
yes.
favorite style of thing.
Hmm.
But like I think oftentimes I feel like when it comes to like things I wish I could tell my younger self is basically like impart the wisdom that you have with age, or like the emotional maturity that you have with age to younger you, because that's something that you were like physiologically incapable of at the time, and so like it's all a shit show. But when you're looking back at it as a, as an adult, it's easier, I think, to impose that kind of, to make sense of those experiences in a way that is satisfying, and that you can like more completely understand with that little bit of distance than you can when you're all in when you're in the middle of it.
yeah, yeah. I'm sorry, I'm distracted because Amethyst Cat Lady just said that that Chadwick Boseman who plays T'Challa in Black Panther passed away.
Oh no.
That's colon cancer, huh? Man,
Oh my god, that's awful.
yeah. Holy shit. Um,
Oof.
well,
Oh.
hold on. Mm,
Also, to Gemini Lightning's earlier point about like school being kind of a microcosm of things, uh, it's cool because like when you make changes in like a sprawling epic fantasy world, they're not immediately visible, and when you make changes in a setting that's like the size of a school building or a school campus, like the things that you do have immediate impact on the world around you, and so like those things that you do there as a player are like very visible.
mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and I think this is another good point that Gemini Lightning makes in addition to that, which is it is also nice to be able to look at all the bad memories and make them not happen. Also, everyone can kind of relate to school. And I think those are two of like some of the biggest draws, right? Which kind of the first point goes to Amethyst Cat Lady's point from earlier, which is like the idea of kind of romanticizing the whole thing, or at least, selectively remembering.
Hmm.
Right, the ability to like it allows you to be an active participant in selectively remembering high school, but it also is a like a fair common ground, like you were saying earlier, John, where essentially it doesn't take a whole lot of imagination to like render that in your mind, that's that setting in your mind, right? Like you have your ideas and everybody's going to fill it in with their uh their real experiences of school, or ones that they've seen in fiction and stuff like that. Like those are the kinds of things that I think probably are huge draws to that.
Yeah, and God, I had a brilliant thought while you were talking, and now it has slipped from my brain. It'll come back to me, but um,
Hmm?
the oh god, no, I totally lost it.
Yeah. Um, let's see. I lost track of chat here because I realized my auto scroll had gone away.
Oh,
Um,
oh no.
Nico
I
has
just
very strong opinions about the German school system. I
ooh.
believe I have heard some of them in the past, but uh, you can feel free to share if you want.
Oh, yeah, sorry. That's actually, I think, Heart of Handprints makes the point that I think, like trying to formulate in my brain while you were talking. Uh, but they said using a setting like school or like a school which everyone is familiar with, at least to some extent, also makes it so much easier to call attention to things that are different or clues that characters should notice that indicate that something strange is happening.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really like that's a really good point, both from like even just a storytelling perspective in media. It's really it's such a good tool, right, for you to be able to call on that set of common experiences and point out like the thing that is different. um and right, and that's one of the things, that's what it was. I was going to talk about accessibility. School settings are extremely accessible, right? Because if you're dropping somebody into a fantasy setting, like it's like, okay, what are the assumptions of this fantasy world? How does magic work here? Or like if it's a science fiction world, how advanced is technology? Like there's some things that like your players or your audience might have to like do some like more work in like trying to suspend their disbelief for that game or that book or that piece of media that they're consuming. But school settings are so accessible because like almost everyone has had some variation of that experience.
Yeah. Amethyst Cat Lady, I don't know if this is any better. I can see that it's not registering as high as it normally does, but there's literally, first of all, I have changed nothing in my settings, and everything is turned up as high as it can be. So I don't know what has happened. Caitlin said the same thing a few episodes ago in Infinite Horizon. She said that I was kind of quiet, and I
Hmm.
don't
Huh.
know what that's about. But
Interesting.
okay, it is better. Cool. I turned everything up as high as it goes, which historically, as Freeman knows, has never been what we've done with our mics, but here I am, I guess. Um, so I had a thought based on what you were saying just now, John, which is also the idea. So this is an issue that I face with. It's one of the reasons why I've come to appreciate fantasy. I mean, sorry, appreciate sci-fi or modern settings over fantasy settings, because some of the things that I like are things like right, like I am, it's no secret I enjoy cosmic horror, and cosmic horror and fantasy don't mix quite as well,
Mm-hmm.
because in fantasy you've got like, oh god, it's a horrific monster, it flies and breathes fire, and then you've got, oh god, it's a horrific monster, it has one eye and hits you with a giant club the size of your house, right? And then just say, oh god, it's a giant monster that comes from very far away and we don't really understand anything about it, but it's gonna probably kill you or something. It doesn't quite hit the same.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
it
There's already so many fantastical elements in that setting that it's like, oh, here's another fantastical element
right.
that we don't
But this
understand,
one's
I
this
guess.
one's weirder than all the other ones. Except in fantasy,
Exactly.
especially in D&D, there's a series like there's a scale of escalation in
Mm-hmm.
D&D where you're like, first you're fighting like some zombies, and or first you're fighting like orcs and goblins, and then some zombies, and then maybe some demons. And demons are weirder than zombies because they come from another plane. But and then you just keep escalating, and eventually it's got the Dragon Ball Z problem of like, this is the most powerful being in the universe
Yeah.
until you defeat him, and there's another one because we got to keep the show going, right? Like, it's got that same problem, and I think I run into that problem, and so it's one of the things that I appreciate about sci-fi and modern settings. But I think there's even an extra step in that direction when you're doing a setting where the characters are kids, because they view the world differently, and so everything is
Mm-hmm.
a bigger problem to them, right? Everything is every problem that they face is going to be magnified like 100-fold because they're kids,
Yeah.
and so I think
Well,
that is a big deal. So
and
yeah.
oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say that's a super good point actually, and one that I hadn't like arrived at. Also, is that like things are like everything is a bigger deal when you're younger. Again, just because like you the part of your brain that like tempers your emotional response to things doesn't finish like coming in until you're 25 or so. depending.
Mm-hmm.
And so the the universe ending eldritch monster is occupies, like, obviously it's a huge deal, and like that's magnified by that, but then also you have in at a similar degree of magnitude, I have to stop the eldritch monster because the eldritch monster might make me fail my math test next week, right? And that's an
And then
equally
both
big
problems are
problem.
equal. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Both the math test and the eldritch monster, they are equally apocalyptic in your mind.
I will die having never asked my date to prom, like
um
this cannot happen.
Nico says, Lucas, you say that, but look at Dark Souls and Bloodborne. I guess, but in those, it's really, it really is sort of, I don't know. I'm speaking a little bit outside of my own experience here because I'm not super familiar with either one of them, other than like from the outside. But with those, aren't they sort of more the cosmic, like the cosmic weird otherworldliness of it? That's the whole thing, right? Like there, it's not like sort of grab bag fantasy, unless I'm mistaken, right? Cause
I'm
yeah,
I'm not sure about Bloodborne, and I've only played a little Dark Souls, but my impression of Dark Souls, just like from what I've seen of it and what I've heard of it, is that it's closer to like dark. Like if you made Conan fantasy like super dark and
Hmm.
much less mystical.
fantasy and eldritch horror can mix really well if it's done well. Yes, and but what I guess what I mean when I say what I when I say that is more that in fantasy there's a lot more leeway for not understanding things, right? Like not understanding is sort of a standard conceit of the world in fantasy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why is that like that? Oh, it's because a wizard did it. That's a long time ago. Why is that like that? Oh, it's the gods. They do weird stuff. We don't understand it. In science fiction and in modern, there's far less leeway for understanding your world. And I don't think that's more realistic. I would never say that because there's lots of things in the real world that we don't understand. We like to make ourselves we human beings like to make ourselves way more important than we are. And so we like to make it seem like we know everything there is to know. We understand fully how our world works, but that's just absolutely not true. But the point is that there's at least the illusion of that, whereas in fantasy there is no illusion of that at all. In sci-fi and modern settings, there is sort of that there's less leeway for the unexplained, right? It either has an explanation or it's extremely weird and unusual and probably the focus of the plot, right? Um so I'm not saying that eldritch horror and fantasy don't mix. I'm just saying that it's very, very hard to do it right in fantasy as opposed to in sci-fi and modern settings. That's more my point. I'm not saying they don't work because they can and do and obviously have, but yeah, like that's sort of more what I meant. But I appreciate you bringing up the counter examples because that is a good point that they do mix. But they have to be done in a certain way. They have to be done taking that extra leeway into account.
Mm-hmm. Gemini mentioned a while back that like Tales from the Loop and Weave are some really great game systems that lean into like school age kids and like school kind of settings. And I've only played a couple of games of Weave in my life, but there is
We've
something to be.
can like it's
Mm-hmm.
yeah there are because there are like lots of different play sets. Like not all of them are school or kid related.
I think the one we played at Gen Con was actually like a horror one. It was different,
That one
like the
definitely
in
was. That was the Gloomies playset, which was
Gloom.
absolutely like the yeah. Even the name tells you exactly what it is. um,
I
Faker Clar, thank you so much for the follow. Welcome.
Oh yeah. I
Um,
just now realized that that's a play on words for Goonies, Lucas.
yes, yes, it is, John.
I'm glad the chat could be here to witness me a year later
Mm-hmm.
finally getting the
Yep,
joke.
yep.
What's that? He who laughs last thinks.
Huh.
I can't remember. What is it?
um, that
Hmm.
yeah. what were we talking about? Oh, right. Sorry, I interrupted you. But yes, you were talking. You were making a point about something.
No, I was just sort of like pivoting back, like, or just remembering what Gemini said about Tales from the Loop and Weave, and something like just kind of also doubling back on the comment that you made about like things being magnified for kids. There's also something to be said, and Weave does a good job of this, of like that sort of like childlike whimsy or wonder is another, I think, hallmark of some school settings too. Like uh some of my favorite movies are the sorts where like the kids wind up like having to confront some like an alien or some terrible abomination that lives in the school, but it turns out like the military's hunting it, but it's friendly, like the Iron Giant kind of thing. The military's after it, and this kid has made friends with a giant iron like space robot
Mm-hmm.
exclusively because he was like, whoa, this is cool,
Well,
instead of being like, oh no, it's a weapon, we have to
and
get rid of it.
and I
Like,
find it's interesting. Another thing that goes along with that is the fact that I think it's interesting because thematically, what it's saying is that there's a lot more of that. Like, there's a. This is sort of more. This is less a point that I'm making and more of a realization that I'm having as we speak here live on the internet. But which is the fact that probably one of the reasons why that is such a popular combination of things is where, like, in particular, the one of the conceits of Tales from the Loop, which is that like the adults can't help you. You're on your own. You kids are on your own. Is that like the thematically, it's that that childlike whimsy and view of the world makes them much more able to accept the out of the ordinary things that are happening, and therefore makes them the best candidates for dealing with it. Right? Like, look at all of the films that are like films and shows like Stranger Things, E.T., like all of those things that make, like, you look at the adults, and the adults are living in the real world, right? They're living in the world that exists, right? The one that is objective, the world of objectivity. And the kids, on the other hand, are like, they're perfectly willing to accept, like, oh, weird alien from another dimension, yeah, okay, how are we gonna deal with that? Like, and they're the ones who are gung-ho about it because they're the ones who, like, they just kind of get it, you know.
yeah, kids do have plot armor.
Mm-hmm. So I never understood in this is a total side note, but like I never understood in games like Fallout, in the Fallout games, or in like in Skyrim, when people would have mods to make the children killable. I'm like, why?
That's a mod?
Why? Yeah, there are mods. There are many of them. Why?
Oh, come on.
I think the one that I've seen was for because I haven't played the Fallout series. I have played Skyrim. I saw a mod that made just the Jarl's kid in Whiterun killable.
I don't remember that.
He's
Huh.
really annoying and kind of a brat, but like I still,
Oh,
that's still like,
that's yeah, that's
I
probably why
was
they
like,
made
this
that.
is still like,
I just
I mean,
don't
he's an
go in the
a-
Jarl's Hall. It's really simple.
Don't enter. Leave.
I don't go in there,
somewhere
and
else.
he doesn't leave it, so it works out fine.
Great. Solved.
I mean, if you get really pissed off, just quick save and like shout, and then reload your save and like blow off some steam that way. But
God.
They don't like it when you shout. Yeah, the
Yeah.
guards tell you, like, "Hey, don't don't do that commotion here."
Damn it, Freeman! Now I want donuts.
I'm going to have to
Sorry.
ask you to stop all of that shouting. It's
Shouting.
making people nervous.
I love being like, "I'll do what I want" on the Dragonborn response, and it,
Yep. Oh gosh.
Speaking of school, have you considered applying to the Mages College in Winterhold?
Oh, Jesus Christ! Get the fuck out of here, John.
oh man, I'm having. Oh god. Oh no. No.
Anytime I walk into that man's office,
Casts
I'm like, where?
literally one spell. It's like, a mage, huh? Have you considered applying? Like, shut the fuck up.
You can walk into that guy's office and like into somebody's office wearing the fucking archmage robes, and they'll be like, "Have you considered?"
There are mods that fix that, dialogue overhauls and stuff. Anyway,
Yeah.
this is not a stream about Skyrim.
Ramblemancy.
Some other time.
That said, though, speaking of the Elder Scrolls, like the whole concept behind Dungeons and Dorm Rooms, the whole thing came from the Arcane University quest in Oblivion. So like, That's where that whole idea started.
Mhm.
Just from the fact that I just loved that quest. It's probably my favorite quest in quest line in Oblivion. But
Man, even with some of like the jaunting into dreams stuff that we did in dungeons and dorm rooms,
mm-hmm.
right down to that quest in Oblivion where the guys, or at least in Skyrim, where the guys got like the huge soul gem that you like traveled into at
Mm-hmm.
one point during the quest, like kind of even similar vibes to that. But
Geek Out says, my dad in the 1960s would jump on a train that ran behind his house and then jump off it at these sand dunes several miles outside of town. I asked, were you afraid of getting hurt? He replied, nah, God protects the stupid.
Oh,
God.
I mean, fair.
That's an interesting point though, because I feel like when I was so this is a change that I've noticed in myself for a long time. Hello, Suki. Um, because when I was in high school, I worked the summer camp or the day camp that I like am currently one of the like directors of. Um, I was a volunteer junior counselor there when I was in high school, and I find that my anxiety is like up for kids doing like dangerous shit is like up here as opposed to when I was in high school. And it's not like the kids are doing different stuff now than they were then. It's just that so I know that I am the differing factor here. And so for me, just like it's like now with my adult brain, I can look around and see, yes, these are all the different ways that they could seriously injure themselves. Whereas back then, I was just like, whatever, they'll be fine. Oh gosh.
Are we just derailing chat with the appearance of the fur baby?
Yes.
She's just kind of chilling here.
Well, honestly, better that than her just sort of like yelling at you from outside the door.
Which is her usual MO. She was like deep beneath my bed, and I don't know what made her decide to come out. Probably chat being here and spamming Ash emotes.
That's probably it.
Yeah.
Um. Okay, let's pivot a little bit and let's talk a little bit about. I want to talk a little bit about movies. I don't think this is going to be a particularly long conversation, right? Movies set in school, movies or shows set in school. I don't think it's a particularly long conversation because I think it's a lot of retreading of ground we've already tread. But in this conversation, but I'm interested, like what, because during quarantine, I discovered that the way that like apparently one of my coping mechanisms is to just watch a lot of like feel good teen movies, like not like not like teen drama like angst movies, but just like the like coming of age feel good dramas, right? That's centered around like teens. So like, yeah, I don't know. I wonder like, and I know that it's a popular genre. Lots of people like it. So I wonder, like, is it different in shows and movies than is the interest different in shows and movies, or is it like, is it kind of the same thing?
So, I'll say again, I feel like we share a brain cell because I also like over the course of quarantine have watched a lot of like the things that I turn to oftentimes are school like focused media.
Mm-hmm.
For whatever reason, I started watching an anime I think called Little Witch Academia, and it's just suffocatingly cute. It's so nice, but like that and like that and like school dramas, school anime dramas are like one of my favorite things to just watch and like feel good. And I think part of it for me, like watching that media, is there's something comforting about a return to that structure, and like the stakes are just so low.
I
You
miss
know,
when people told me what to do with my life, and I didn't have to figure it out for myself.
that's like a little bit it. I'm gonna be honest. Like, and then sometimes it's so nice,
I miss
especially
when these were my problems.
yeah, exactly. Right. You're like, I really wish having my biggest like current problem being like, fuck, who am I gonna ask to homecoming?
Mm-hmm.
And like, man, I think like Mr. Gilbert is gonna spring a quiz on us next week, and that's terrifying. Like,
Yeah. Um, Gemini Lightning says perks of being a wallflower. One of my life movies. It's heavy but so good, and a lot of it deeply resonates with me. Yeah, I love that movie. I haven't seen it in a very long time, but in fact, I think I was in college the last time I saw it. But I really enjoy that movie.
Didn't we watch that? No, never mind. I'm thinking of something different. I
Which
thought
one
we
are you
watched that in
thinking
high
of?
school. Didn't we watch that in high school? And what? I'll have to look it up.
Maybe, because I feel like the last time that I saw it wasn't the first time. We might
For
have.
some reason, I thought,
We might
yeah.
have. Or yeah, I don't remember. But
Mm, I
but
mean, the
yeah.
title made me think of something else, but it's not the one I'm thinking.
Yeah.
So I'll have to see it because I haven't seen it.
Yeah. I honestly wish that I had some that I could recommend from my binge, but quite honestly, they just they were gone from my brain as soon as I finished them. So um and this cat lady says with John's point about the stakes being low, I wonder if people with anxiety are more drawn to them. I know that they've
Hmm.
found that people with anxiety are more inclined to want to watch things they've already seen since it's less stressful. Yeah, I could
Hmm.
absolutely see that. There's definitely an argument to be made there, I think.
Yeah, actually, that does strike a little bit true. I think, at least it strikes a little bit true with me. Like there is something, like I said, like almost comforting about watching kind of the same cyclical stories in a very specific place play out, and like even more than that, there's something like really satisfying for whatever reason about watching these kids just like really going through it and then like coming out the other side. I
It's
just
like,
like
ah,
there's so many
see, you're gonna
times.
be okay. See, you're doing it. You're even if you're not okay, you will be. It'll all work out.
Oh man, like I went from in high school seeing media like this and being like, "Oh my god, just like solve your problems." And then like as an adult, I'm just like, "Oh, I just want to give you a hug and tell you it's
Mm-hmm.
going to be okay, all right? Like just,
Yeah.
it'll be fine."
Man, in high school, I was like constantly rolling my eyes at anybody who told me that like a year from now, none of this, you won't even remember any of this. And like I used to roll my eyes at that shit, but it's
Oh.
absolutely true. It's
It
absolutely
super is.
true. Yeah.
Oh my god, it's so true that people are like, "You're never going to remember any of this." And like you
See,
remember that specific conversation just to spite them, but then in reality like 2 years later you're like, "Fuck, I don't remember
See,
any
but
of that shit."
the thing is, that's not advice that I would like. Because even though it's true, it's not helpful advice. It's not useful advice, and I would never say that to anybody,
Mhm.
without like heavy caveats on it.
Yeah.
Because like, it's the kind of thing that a, what the hell does that mean to me right now? And b, like, I remember fully recognizing at the time that my problems were not like real problems, but they were the most real problems that I had, and therefore they were real to me, you know? And like,
Yeah.
and it was one of my few, I think, uh, wise opinions that I had when I was in high school. It's like, listen, I know this is not a real problem, but it's real to me, so shut the hell up.
Mm-hmm.
My
Um,
feelings are valid.
um, Heart of Handprints, thanks so much for hanging out with us. Have fun over at Saving Throw. Um, we'll see you next time.
Yeah.
Um,
And hello, VOD, Heart of Handprints. It's good to see you.
um, but Lucas, consider I do remember shit. Okay, yeah, fine. Well,
I do.
you might remember it, but like it doesn't. It's not the same thing because it's no longer part of your immediate words.
I remember snippets,
Yeah,
but the timeline is off. It's way off.
yeah.
I'll leave it there. I don't know. I don't really know where that thought was going, but
Well, no, it's
yeah,
fair. I think
it's
it's.
it's the how things kind of like connected to each
Mhm.
other is what I missed that part.
Right, right.
It's like I swear that happened 2 years before this other thing. It's like no, it was in that whole thing. It's
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Um.
I love Ramblemancy. I love you guys.
I do too. I do sort of love episodes where we kind of just like we wander to and from the topic, where like
Mhm.
we direct ourselves back to it, and then we just kind of drift off for a while, and then we come back to
I'm
the topic.
sorry. I'm
Sorry,
just I could
that
just
was
I
perfect.
could just hear in the background, like I could hear that big fucking fly like run smack into something. It was so loud.
That is a big fucking fly.
It
Just you
is.
hear that thwack.
I can't even
Hopefully you can.
imagine what it ran into. Oh, the wall.
Man,
I can tell it's the wall because it's still there.
it's
It jumped out at it, Lucas.
Yeah.
Like,
I thought I could
hmm.
sneak attack the wall, but actually I'll just land here for a while. No, hopefully you can get that thing outside though before sleep time, because that'll keep you up.
Yeah.
I know it'd keep me
We'll
up.
see.
Oh
Um,
gosh.
Nika says, I feel like a lot of the conflict in school stories boils down to I have a deadline I have to meet, but my friends slash love interest slash change of life circumstances are eating up all the time I would need to spend on it. Yeah, that's I think that's very true. Yes. Um, although I think it depends. I think there are some there are other types of stories which is the more there's that, and then there's the one like the other most common one I think is the like I'm in high school and high school is ending and I don't know what to do. I haven't figured out my life. And then by the end
Hmm.
of it they realize
Oh,
they didn't need to, or they do figure out their life somehow, which is false and just,
Yeah.
but yes, I agree. Like there are some very specific stories that happen in like specific conflicts that take place in school settings. Um,
That comment reminded me of something that I was going to bring up at some point this week, which is that schools, in addition to many of the other things we have talked about last night, just as a place in real life, but also very, very much in stories, are a liminal space.
liminal
They're
spaces. How many rule of lore buzzwords can we fit into this episode of Ramblemancy? There's liminal spaces. Have we talked about found families yet? We haven't, but that's certainly part of this.
Mhm.
Um,
Protagonists figuring out their life is how you know it's a fairy tale.
mhm.
Correct.
That's why my favorite teen movies are the ones that end with them with them realizing that it's okay that they haven't figured their life out and they start on a new journey, and it ends with like an ambiguous kind of like this is the beginning of the next part of the story, which is
Mhm.
life. Those are the best ones. Anyway, continue.
Yeah.
Sorry, John, I didn't mean to interrupt.
oh, life.
Oh no!
You're talking about liminal spaces.
No, like there's it's like it's sort of a thing that's key to I think school might be a genre that is bound up with like just almost bound inseparably from coming of age stories, just because like that's a thing that happens at that age. Like there are several like milestones in your life that
Mhm.
occur like around that time, like entering into young adulthood, and then like kind of graduating from that into like a semblance of adulthood.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
school, like the school setting, I think marks that kind of transitional period in life that a lot of people
Well,
look back
and it makes
that love.
sense cuz like when I was taking like in sociology there's like you talk about the different institutions that shape people's lives, and the two most influential in order are family and school. Those are like the two most influential institutions in people's lives.
Hmm.
And like so it makes sense that all of our stories are about both one or both of those things.
Yeah, and we
Right.
got there with we got there with found family. Um,
Hey. Ding ding ding.
another another one for the bingo card,
Yeah.
folks.
Uh, rooms?
Rooms.
Yeah. Yeah, another thing to consider, schools and tournament arcs. True. I mean, hell, look, you could just look at Harry Potter and like the omitted Quidditch arcs from the from the movies. The Quidditch Cup. Those are and
Hmm.
yeah.
An uncomfortable realization that I had about Harry Potter long after I had finished reading the series as it was coming out was that
I'm
Harry
sorry.
Potter was
I'm just laughing because that's the beginning of that statement. An uncomfortable realization I had about Harry Potter, and I'm like, I have
Yeah.
no idea where you're going with that,
Yep.
because it could be anywhere.
It could be.
Continue, John.
An uncomfortable realization that I had about Harry Potter. I mean, there's a lot of places this
Mhm.
could go, but I'm not going to go to many of those. That I had about Harry Potter long after I had finished reading it, was like, wait, Harry Potter was a jock.
Mm-hmm.
Like Harry and Ron were jocks. And I was like, oh shit. I was a huge nerd in high school, and I still am because, I mean, I write and make content for a TTRPG streaming channel. I think that like says enough about my current like state in life. But I realized at a certain point that I was like, oh, I'm Hermione in this story, not Harry. And like for the longest time, I was like, oh, I'm Harry. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. No,
Huh.
yeah,
that's true.
yes.
That's true, Amethyst.
Those exact words were ones that I was thinking as John was talking. Which Harry Potter was a jock who became a cop. Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah. Oh
All
no.
cops are bastards and fuck turfs. Just your non-daily reminder.
I,
Or
it-
weekly
I
one.
I'm definitely not Draco Malfoy, but in high school I got Draco Malfoy, and I
Oh,
got
yeah.
Draco Malfoy even leading into my early 20s. Oh god, I just said that, and I'm not sure why, but I guess it's something to do with the blonde hair
I think
that I
that
had
was
like
literally
pretty
the whole
long,
thing. That was it.
and it was slicked back. The same
Mhm.
reason I got Eminem as well,
Yep.
because I'm slim. No, I'm not gonna go into it. Is that the fly? Is it back?
Was it on camera? Did you see it?
No, I
I
just
think
saw you look up
It came
in that
pretty close to my
direction.
face that time. Like it flew directly
Oh,
at
I-
my face.
I swear to
wants to
God,
be friends.
I think I saw it just go like zipping by behind you. Tonight we actually had an unannounced guest on Ramblemancy, and it's
Yes.
big fuck off horsefly in Lucas's
Yep.
room.
It's not a
Oh, gosh.
horsefly, because if it
I
was,
hope it's
I
not.
would have been. There would have been yelling. There would have been a lot of
Man,
like
yeah, the
a lot
horseflies
more
and
cursing.
actually there are no horseflies here, I don't think, in
Mm-mm.
PT. But in
Mm.
Cool Scene there were,
Mm.
and ouch.
Yeah, hate
Ouch.
those fuckers. Anyway,
It hurts so bad.
yeah.
We didn't even have the really big ones. We just had, but they were horseflies. They're just not like.
Sorry, this just reminded me of a story from. So John knows who I'm talking about, but I had a professor in college, who, like, literally, it was like the first or second day of class that semester, and she spent a solid like 2.5 minutes of class, because we were talking about the gadfly, right? Like we were talking about, the fucking. Wow, all of my words are gone.
It's okay. It's been me
Yeah.
most of tonight.
John, help me explain the gadfly.
Oh God, the gadfly.
All of my words went away.
I have to remember which one and that is.
It's anyway. The point is that because we were like talking about this in class, um, she then proceeded to like explain like, okay, it's called the gadfly because of, well, you know what gadflies do, right? Like they land on a horse and they bite him, and the horse freaks out and then and jumps, gets it moving, and then proceeded to spend like 2.5 minutes imitating a horse being bitten by a gadfly, like all around the room. It was the funniest shit.
Wait, which professor was this?
This would have been Kildegard.
God, I knew it. I knew you were gonna
Yeah.
say Kildegard.
Yeah.
I knew you were gonna say Kildegard.
Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah.
I think I've heard one of these stories.
Yeah.
That name sounds very familiar.
That
you
woman.
said spent 2.5 minutes, and I was like, well then. And then you
She's-
said imitating a horse, and I was like, Kildegard.
Yeah, that woman is like nuts in the best way that a teacher can be. Like just in the absolute best way possible. Anyway,
There's, in addition to being my favorite people when I was a student, the teachers, like the teachers that are like that teacher, the one that gets it, are my favorite figures in
Mhm.
school stories.
Yeah.
And I find that I wind up sympathizing with them very much, like between having like a little bit of inside experience from being a teacher, but then also being an adult. Like I always it's so often the art teacher. I feel like in school stories, that's like
Or the English teacher, actually,
the art teacher or
interestingly
the
enough.
English
Huh.
teacher. Hmm.
It's almost always one of those two. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just thinking like, oh, Captain, my Captain, the Dead Poet Society, English teacher,
Huh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
um, Speak, really good YA lit book. Uh, that it's the art teacher in that one.
Ooh, or theater.
Um,
Amethyst Cat Lady says, yeah, yeah,
that's right. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. It's always the arts.
yeah. Mm-hmm. Uh, Dread Pirate Robert, welcome. It was my drama teacher in high school. Yeah,
Hmm.
that's fair. Yeah. Actually, weirdly enough, in real life for me, it was my math teacher.
Really?
Yeah, she was excellent. She like I was because when I transferred to the public high school, I was super
Mhm.
behind in math. Like when I was a junior in high school, I was so far behind, and she was um one of those teachers who like genuinely cared about her students learning and was always extremely patient even with the student who was very clearly just like fucking around and like didn't give a shit. She like somehow made him give a shit like at just a little bit, but like she somehow was able to do that, and she gave me
Hmm.
she like helped me so much. And like by the time so to the point where like by the time I graduated high school, I was like exactly where I should be, which is yeah.
There's especially, and this is something actually way a long time ago in chat, karaoke night made a point that like we've all like felt alone, particularly in that period in our lives. We've all felt alone.
Yeah.
And those kinds of teachers are the ones that I find are the ones that like that make a difference
They're the
in that
ones who
moment, that
haven't
make you,
forgotten what that feels like.
yeah, yeah. And that's very powerful,
Hmm.
right? It's very powerful both as a both like personally in the moment to student and teacher, right? But it's also like a very powerful like connection in storytelling. And
Yeah, go ahead, sorry.
bring it full circle for the reason that I think that I've been enjoying that kind of media in quarantine. We're all fucking lonely.
Yeah. Yeah.
and
That's fair.
so and so stories about people finding each other, I think, are very attractive to me right now.
So, okay, that thing about the teacher, it's interesting. Going back to my earlier point about how kids are the ones who are more likely to understand the supernatural problems that are taking place, the more likely to accept it, and therefore the best candidates to handle it.
Mm-hmm.
But consider that there's always on the subject of like that teacher or that adult figure who hasn't the understanding one who hasn't forgotten what it's like to feel like the kids feel. Consider that there's always that in almost every story like that. There's always the adult who is who like bumbles their way into it and is like, "What the hell is this?" And the kids explain it to them, and they're like, "Okay, we got to do something then, I guess." Right? And like helps them. So like,
Mm-hmm. Just rolls with it. Yeah.
yeah,
All right.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like Samwise the Brave in
Mm.
Stranger Things. I
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
can't remember the
Bob,
actress. Yeah,
his
Bob.
Sean Astin.
Shauna. There we go.
Yeah,
There we go.
Lovely man.
yeah.
Just bumbles into the middle of like this horrifying eldritch thing that is happening that only the kids know about.
Yeah.
He's like,
He's like,
okay.
okay, all right. I don't understand what's going on, but it sounds bad, and let me help. Like, um,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, sorry. Catching up with chat. Dread Pirate Over says I had a math prof in college like that. Math prof. And nowadays when I see a story about a teacher that is cool, it feels like another shoe is about to drop. A bad shoe. Yeah.
Hmm.
That's. I wonder, is that media do you think that that's media that has changed and altered your view of that, or is it like real life experience that has altered that perception? I'm curious. I'm curious what you think about that, because I could see an argument for either. Because like definitely media changes over time. Like the type of like the tropes that people use change over time. So that's absolutely
Hmm.
a thing for sure. But also like real life experiences might sour your perceptions of stuff. So like I'm curious which one it is for you. Um, there is media, but there are real examples. Okay, fair enough. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Nico says the best teacher I ever had was Mr. Kosk, my fifth, seventh grade history teacher. The only person to ever hold captivating lessons that actually motivated me to learn. Oh man, yeah, that's awesome. Like sticky bad news phenomenon. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah. Like, oh, sorry. What were you gonna say, Freeman?
I was just giving it a really good think this whole
Mm-hmm.
time, and like I think probably my favorite teacher. Oh, goodness me.
Was it perhaps Sherman?
Well, from that school, yes, because he was cool. He
Uh-huh.
was an overall cool dude.
He was the guy who made learning history fun.
And he made, yes,
Like,
and
which, like,
palatable,
yeah, which,
easy to, you know,
which is like one of the single.
and he was personable too.
Yeah, he was just a fun person to be around. But that like the way that history is taught in schools is quite possibly one of the biggest crimes of the public school system
I know.
here, because that shit's fascinating, and yet we
Yeah.
look at it as like the way it's taught makes it just so like, you know,
Mm-hmm.
which leads a lot of people to just not learn it, which causes problems.
Oh,
American
mm,
government.
big
Anyway,
ones. There you go.
uh,
That's what I was gonna do.
Yeah, for having a like a government class requirement in its school system, like in its federal
most
school
people
system.
don't though. That's the thing.
Hmm.
Most people
Really?
don't. No, it's not. Civics is not really a thing that exists anymore in most
Ooh.
schools across the
Not
country.
good.
Yeah,
Because I remember when I was in high school in Iowa, at least, like there
yeah,
was a there was a you had to take a government you had to take like two different
yeah.
classes
No,
as part of your high school
we
program.
didn't.
One was government, and I can't
That
remember
was
what the
not
other
one of our
was.
requirements here. And that the fact that you have that's a holdover, because the fact that you have that as a requirement is not common anymore. Yeah,
Wow, that's
yeah, 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 yeah.
Hmm.
Yes,
Ouch.
exactly, Dread Pirate Roberts. That's exactly what I'm talking about. High school history in high school is just remembering dates and names and places, and those are literally all
Yeah.
the things that I was. See, I could always remember the chronological order things happened in,
Mm.
and what they
Mhm.
meant, which is the important part of history.
Yeah.
But the thing that was always pushed on me was dates, names, places. You know, I could always remember the chronological order of things and the like context and like for why those
Mhm.
things were important. Couldn't tell you dates. I could not keep dates in my head to save my life.
We're verging on John rants about American schools at this point, but yes, Derpando and kill standardized testing, because the
Yep.
reason that it's like
Yeah.
that is because what you need to know for the standardized test is the dates,
Mm-hmm.
and if you don't know those, then you fail the test and your school gets less money, and so your school goes under, which is great.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. Also, Gugats
Mm.
makes an excellent point about American history textbooks in particular, focusing on American exceptionalism.
Also extremely important and true. um. Yeah. Dread Pirate Robert. If I was told the story behind what happened, I would remember it so much better if it weren't just names, dates, and places. Exactly. Exactly. And having like the context for those things explained, right? And I think that's a not just the context for the events, but hell, the context for knowing about them,
Hmm.
right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
why is it important that we know about these things? Because if that was maybe the take that we had on history, maybe people wouldn't, maybe like kids wouldn't check the fuck out. I don't know.
Yeah.
Um,
Like, why do I have to do this, Mr. Boyle? Is a question
I
that I
just
should always be prepared to answer.
yeah,
Like,
like
Hmm.
it's like oh gosh, is it Community? Is this a Community quote? Yes, it is. Where Troy's like, why would I take a class on something that's already happened? And
so it doesn't
Yeah.
happen again, Troy.
Hmm. Hmm. I mean, it was funny when he said it. It's a funny line, but
Yeah.
yes. So it doesn't happen again.
Yeah.
Fucking looks around uncomfortably at America. Anyway,
Anyway, just a thought that I have. We've kind of talked a little bit around all of the things that I'm about to talk about, but it's a sorry, I just read
yeah.
chaos.
Yeah.
God damn it. Here I am, Matt, about to make a point about school and school stories, and you just hit me with that. Um,
Listen,
sorry.
I don't believe that any of you need to hear this, but I'm going to say it anyway. Do not drink bleach
Please don't. It's not
or
food.
detergent of
Yeah.
any kind.
It's
Please
not.
don't. I don't
It's
think
not
you need to
candy.
hear this, but I'm going to say it anyway, just in case.
Hmm.
Just in case somebody needed me to say it in order to, like, internalize.
College Humor did it way better, but please
Yeah.
don't drink bleach.
uh,
Uh,
Oh. Anyway,
yes, John, what
I'm
were you going
sorry,
to
that's
say
still
about schools?
it's still cracking me up.
oh.
Anyway, I was just going to say I'm thinking particularly of the Dead Poet Society, which is
Mhm.
a very, very good movie that features Robin Williams. That I watched several times in high school, and then I think once in college, maybe. But it's that story in particular is the one that comes to mind when I think about this. But we've talked like a little bit in terms of like in our discussion about Tales from the Loop of adults. Like adults can't help you. They don't believe, or like they're trapped in dealing with their adult problems, or in
Mhm.
many cases they are the problem, right? Like adults are bound up in these real life like power systems and structures that prevent them from having the same freedom creatively, emotionally, whatever that the kids have to attack the problem, or to be capable of dealing with it, or
Or
like
perceiving it.
having or perceiving it even, right?
Yeah.
um and one of the things that I think about when I think about that story in particular is just like even that teacher, the one who like really connects with kids, who like understands this, or like who makes school this like fun, vibrant place to be for them. um Even in that movie, like in trying to do so, like he I think he loses his job, um because of some of the things that go on over the course of the movie. He still has that impact, but the he's still like bound by those systems, whereas the kids in the end are like able to continue to defy them.
Yeah.
And so I think there's something about that freedom that kids have to both like perceive and respond to things is something that's also maybe attractive about school stories in that way, especially
Yeah.
as you're an adult and you start identifying. you I identify with the adults in the story, but I sympathize with the children.
Yeah. Yeah. There's also something innately punk about like kids solving problems in spite of the system,
Oh, it's so good.
right? Like
It's so good.
I'm thinking about the movie Swing Kids. I don't know if you ever saw that movie.
Mm-mm.
It's it's basically about like the rise of swing as a like in amongst the youth as a way of like defying the like essentially like the Hitler Youth, right? And the rise of
Yeah.
neo-Nazism. Um and yeah, it's an interesting movie, but essentially that whole movie is just it's just punk. Like that's what that is. It's just a bunch of kids who are like basically like sticking up two middle fingers to the system, which is essentially like leaning heavily in favor of like, you know, neo-Nazism and white supremacism. So like supremacy. Wow, words are fucking hard today. Like I said. Anyway, yeah, it's it's a decent film. It's maybe a little on the dated side, but it's
Hmm.
good. It's a good film. But it's essentially that. Like there is something that is I think, and it's what's interesting is I think it's really cool because we're actually kind of seeing it. Not to like put too like not to emphasize too much the current events, but we're seeing a lot of it in like an uptick in activism amongst like Gen Z right now. Like we're literally seeing that shit, right?
Hmm.
I think that's so cool.
A bunch of TikTokers buying out the presidential rally, just
Allegedly.
allegedly. Uh,
Yeah.
Independent of whether or not it's true, it's a
Hmm.
nice story.
Hmm.
Yeah. But yeah. Um
Yeah.
what was I going to say about this somehow. Anyway, yeah. Honestly, kids in like sort of punk genres is probably is because punk is all about punching up, right? And like
Hmm.
there's not much further down that you can punch up from being a kid in an oppressive like right?
Yeah. Like you can't punch up from much lower than that. Like you
Not
said, like
really.
it's
Cuz kids like
you're
like in even in under the most ideal circumstances don't have a lot of power, right? Because there's a
mhm.
lot of like institutional like just sort of uh pressures in that way, right? Where like kids basically like you got to go to school. You are obligated to go to school. You must go. You have to obey the like there's a special set of laws that apply only to you, right? And like those kinds of things. And so yeah, I don't know. I think that's it's probably the best like in TTRPGs at least. It's probably the best way to have to add punk to your genre by
Mhm.
like making the characters kids.
Yeah. Like I chose I think the other two like players are playing 20 somethings, and I chose to play a kid in the Cyberpunk game that I'm playing right now, and it has like it has definitely, I think, I haven't given much thought to what it would be like if I had played another 20 something character, but it definitely, at least to me personally, that story feels much more punk because I chose to play a kid who's caught up in all of this like emergence of like superheroes in the midst of like this dystopian science fiction setting. Like it's all I don't know, like you said earlier, it's all much bigger
Mm-hmm.
to this 17-year-old character that it's happening to. Also,
But also weirdly smaller. Like that's the other thing. Like it's everything is as kids. Like the world is so big, but it's also weirdly small.
yeah, like it's wild playing a character who is simultaneously concerned about the fact that they are maybe wanted by a literal supervillain that they accidentally like bumped into tonight and then managed to outrace on their bike, and then also I'm pretty sure that Mr. Fissler is going to give us a test in English on Monday, and I couldn't study because I was being chased by a supervillain who can shoot lightning out of their hands. Right? Those two problems again are like equal, and
Mm-hmm.
so it's I don't know, there's
Well,
something cool about the way that those schools about the way that it connects the mundane to the fantastical.
and that's fair. I was also very more generally speaking about just like being a kid, or also like stories about kids where the world itself not it's big and overwhelming and you're small and you but in that it's also the world is also very small because you don't have any experience with it, right? Like your experience is pretty limited at that point unless you've had a very very like unusual life like childhood,
Mm-hmm.
right? Generally speaking, your experiences in the world are very limited. So the world is big and overwhelming, but at the same time, it's also very small.
And everything's new,
Mm-hmm.
right? You haven't experienced many things more than a few times, and so like this strange wild thing, you're so used to dealing with new things, to coming to understand new things, that whatever this fantastical element is, or whatever it is that's happening, the plot demands is the same degree of wild as everything else, because it's new too, so like might as well just add it to the pile of
Yeah,
new shit I've
this
experienced
might as
this
well
week.
happen.
Yeah, you know, might as well be superheroes now. Might as well be a horrifying eldritch entity like taking over the school, whatever. Like,
Yeah, like yeah. Um. Well.
I've triggered because of some of our mods are in the game. I've triggered a reminiscing fest for Seattle 2098. Um,
Okay. I think with our very last thing, we can go back to a question Nico asked earlier, which is, what are cool ways to have school-like environments in your game outside of traditional schools? So do you
so
mean Nico? Did you mean like outside the genre entirely, or do you mean just like with still within the genre of like being kids, or do you mean like outside the genre but sort of evoking the same purpose.
School-like environment.
Hmm.
Yeah, because I
Hmm.
think like my initial response to that question is that like kids on bikes feels like the natural extension of having like many of the school age and like coming of age themes that school stories tend to feature, um, without having it be like a school show. Like kids on bikes
Right.
almost to me feels like an extension of the school genre, depending on the show. Like they kind of tend to walk together, and how much you cross over the line towards one or the other depends on which like the feeling that you really want. But
Kind of like spring break or summer vacation, like away from school.
mhm.
Hmm.
Summer
School
camp
like.
actually I think is a really good answer to your own question. It's got that same kind of structure to it.
Hmm.
Something else that I think is also it sort of has, I think, the same goal but primarily in setup rather than in the actual structure, because it itself is an unstructured activity, which I think is just camping in general. Like not necessarily
Mm.
summer camp, but like
Mm-hmm.
going camping, where it has
Ooh.
kind of a similar setup, right? In terms of the feel of the setup, where it's like this simplification of your world, right? You are literally extricating yourself from the complex day-to-day life and going somewhere simpler where it's just outside and you are there, you're in nature, in you're there, and I mean this may be extreme, but you're surviving, right? Like that's the concern of that. You're just existing in nature, right? There's no phone calls to take, there's no homework to do, like things like that, right? Like you're just there. And so it's, I think, not in terms of structurally throughout, like if you're talking about TTRPGs throughout the game, it's not exactly the same as school, but it has, I think, a similar setup for that reason, because it is essentially it is a microcosm and simplification of life, of regular day-to-day life. So that's what I would say.
Yeah.
um,
Hmm.
I also think that like in terms of structure, like military as a setting.
Actually, yeah, it does. Like, it's got like some of the same like hallmarks in terms of like there's kind of a semi-rigid hierarchy and power structures
Right.
that make it up.
I'm thinking like specifically in terms of like, and it's not. I know that Starfleet is not technically a military, but like in terms of Starfleet, that's structure right there. That is what that is. The whole thing
Hmm.
is just, it's a structure.
Yeah, or like hell, if you want to like in sci-fi specific, just like a being on a starship is kind of that. Like your world extends basically to where the spaceship can take you, and while you're getting there, whatever the hell is on it.
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah.
And with that, I just realized with that answer to that question, are the both TTRPG shows that you have run have school-like environments.
Hey.
We have a brand, and it's
As
school.
it turns out, I really like structure, even though I also really hate it.
What was it? There was something that a middle school teacher said to me when I was doing my student teaching. No, I was substituting after I had done my student teaching, but I was just like chit chatting in between classes with her, and she had to like stop and go like yell at a kid who was trying to like climb on his desks and throw things around. Um, as like middle schoolers are wont to think is a good idea during passing time when the teacher's not in the room. Uh, but something that she said to me, because it was seventh period, last class of the day, something that she said to me, if you like at the end of the day when I was talking to her about what had happened, she was just like, I was actually talking to her just about like the effect that I had when I was subbing for classes there, and the thing that she said to me was, um, kids crave structure even though they hate it. They
Right.
crave boundaries, is what she
Hmm.
said, and I was like, ooh, that's a really good like little snippet of teacher wisdom right
Yep.
there.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Nico says, and I think this is a good question to end on. So, taking all of these into consideration, what would you say are the pillars of how to construct a school-like setting? I think structure is pretty important, but I
Hmm.
also think slightly less obviously a simplification of day-to-day regular life. I think is another important part of that. Um, whether that's like making it into like a microcosm or just straight up extracting day-to-day life from it. Um,
Hmm. Yeah, I think one of the things that I was going to go to that you said, which you said better in saying structure, was like routine.
mm,
There's an expected series. There should be an expected series of things that happen over the course of like a set period of time, right? Which is kind of like the definition of structure, at least in this case.
mm-hmm.
But one of the things that we talked about earlier is that like things are wrong in a school when the routine is disrupted because it's very regular.
Yeah,
And so I think that that's another thing. There has to be like that structure, that routine, that kind of
Mhm.
the things happen the same way,
that's why
except for when they don't.
And
that's why school movies start with like it's a regular day where we're before the bell, we're just talking to your friends and talking about that test, complaining about teen things. Then you show up to class and substitute teacher. Suddenly, the steady state world is disrupted. Anyway, yeah.
Yep. I'm I'm just thinking of that opening shot of every teen school show now where like it's like shaky cam just kind of like following the protagonist who is looking directly at the camera and then like explaining who people are on their way in and what things are and stuff like that. Just yeah, hey, so I mean, this is a regular day here at Bilgewater High, and
That's Robbie
that
Baker. Last year, he got in trouble for snorting 300 pounds of bubble gum. It was really rough.
yeah, like exactly that scene. I'm glad we're on the same page about this.
Um, so it says hierarchical structure, routines, separation from normal life. Yeah, I'd say that pretty much covers it. There's probably something else if we spend some time thinking about it, but uh, time. Not only is it fake, but it's not a luxury that we currently have.
For we are out of it.
Yes. There's literally a classmate holding the camera. Am I thinking of Wendy Wu? Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
All right, we're gonna go because it's the end of the episode, and that's what happens at the end of the episode. We leave. But we if it's fake, how can you be out of it? If it's fake, we never had it, Matt. So
We've just been faking it this whole time.
um,
Hey, I noticed that a certain friend of the stream
I was
named
gonna say,
Rainy
yeah,
Keys
Rainy Keys is streaming right now. I was gonna say we should go raid her. Um,
rhymes.
yes, crimes. We're gonna go raid Rainy and see what she's doing today. Last time she was drawing some pretty cool stuff, and I didn't actually get a chance to see what she's doing right now. But
Let me take a look.
also authority figures. Yes, that is also useful.
Oh, she's drawing I think like a portrait or like a tarot. Yeah, it's a portrait, not a tarot card.
Cool,
Mhm.
cool. All right.
Equally cool.
We are gonna
It
go
looks
raid
cute.
Rainy, but remember tomorrow night at 6 p.m. Pacific, we will be here playing Borderlands, running around collecting guns and blowing stuff up. And by stuff I mean
I'll
John,
be.
and by us I mean him blowing himself up. Um,
Oh, don't forget when in doubt, grenade out.
when in doubt, grenade out.
Also,
Never forget
Murderbot.
that.
Also, Murderbot. Oh my
Uh,
God, you and Matt sharing a brain cell here. Um,
this is why we employed Matt as one of our mods,
yeah.
because he shares the staff room brain cell.
Yeah, we just
Mm.
kind of pass it around, and
Hmm.
uh, occasionally I'm gonna stop. All right, because I'm not
Oh.
because I'm not currently in possession of the brain cell, so I will not be able to carry through with the bit. So we will continue instead
Fair enough.
by me telling you about objective things that don't require creativity on my part, which is telling you like schedule stuff. We'll be back on a day, Wednesday. After tomorrow, we will be back on Wednesday for the part 2 of question mark Infinite Horizons finale. And we will be
It'll be a
finishing that
thing.
up. It'll be a thing. I'm not sure what kind of thing it'll be, but it will be one. Of that, we can be certain. All
That'll
right
be
then.
at 6 p.m.
Yes, that will be at 6 p.m. Pacific on Wednesday. So we're gonna yay schedule and routine. Exactly, that's what we're doing. We're just putting into practice what we've been talking about right now. Um, and this is in fact rather a simplification of real life, or at least a departure from it. And as such, that means we have only one thing left to add, which is authority figures, which is me telling you to go give Rainy Keys a big rule of lore hug. So we're gonna go raid Rainy right now, and yeah, so stick around for that. Let's go say hi to Rainy, and we'll see you hopefully tomorrow. But if not, we will see you the next time you decide to come roll with us. Good night and good zone, everybody. We will see you soon.